How lovely to be with you all. It's really great to be together after all this time. Welcome to our second virtual monthly meeting. You have a treat in store. I can't wait to be with you all again in person in the Harlington. It's going to be some time, I suspect, maybe next year, but we will be together again. If you're watching this, it means that you have either recently renewed your membership or joined Fleet FU3A, and I want to say thank you. Next month we have a real treat for you. It's our virtual AGM, and I look forward to seeing you then, because we're going to do it through Zoom, and we will be able to see you, one hopes. Before I hand over to John, our monthly meeting secretary, I want to say thank you, a particular thank you to Jerry Ward, who has been the brains behind this virtual monthly meeting and the last virtual monthly meeting, which I know you enjoyed. We had over 1,000 hits on it. And thank you to John as well, who's been liaising with Jerry and doing a lot of the work alongside him in producing this monthly meeting, which I'm sure you will enjoy. So, handing over to John, he's going to introduce our speakers.
Well, I promised you a treat, and here it is. Twice Jazz Musician of the Year, a worldwide reputation, a man who's played with Jules Holland, Brian Ferry and Humphrey Lyttelton. Today we have legendary jazz saxophonist Alan Barnes for you. Alan is a composer, a raconteur, a consummate saxophonist. And how did we get somebody of that exalted status? Well, look no further than Mike Rance. Mike runs our local jazz group, but he's also the National Jazz Advisor for the U3A. Alan's session was recorded in the local URC church lobby, and please don't be distracted by what seems to be an intrusive laughter track. It isn't, it's just me thoroughly enjoying the stories that Alan shares with us.
Well, without blowing his own trumpet, and by the way, that's one instrument that he doesn't play, on his own website, he's described as a prolific international performer, composer, arranger, band leader, and touring soloist. Best known for his work on clarinet, alto, and baritone sax, which he's brought along today. He's a multiple award winner and an educator to boot. Well, I hope to explore some of these aspects of his work. So a warm welcome anyway to Fleet FU3A, Alan.
Thank you. The only thing missing from that introduction was the word was. Was a prolific composer. Was.
Let's start at the beginning of your career.
Right.
Near the beginning of your career. In your youth, when was it that you took up wind instruments and why?
Well, I was 12 years old. I wanted a saxophone, and my dad typically started asking around at work, and there was lots of musicians, semi-pro musicians at my dad's works, and one of them, whose name was Ron Yarwood, said, get him a clarinet, don't let him start on the saxophone because he'll never learn the clarinet. So I had to get grade 8 on the clarinet before I was allowed the instrument I wanted. So I managed to do that by the time I was 15, so for my 15th birthday I got an alto saxophone, which I was delighted with. And it's that one there. How many years is that? 46 years later, I'm still playing the same instrument.
Did you have lessons?
I had lessons off somebody called Anne Walker in Altrincham, where I grew up. Altrincham, incidentally, was a great jazz town. It doesn't sound like it. It was a market town, but it had a pub called the Malt Shovels. And the landlord was called Laurie Renton. You can't say that after 3 or 4 pints. Laurie Renton. And he used to let me in when I was a teenager, and occasionally I'd sit in with people like the Martinique Jazz Band. There was a guy called Alan Butler, who used to be a very good tenor player, who played the Vibes. And there was all kinds of mainstreamy bands, and it was lovely. There was 9 sessions a week, and I even played the siren for Charlie's Banjo Kings one Sunday night. So there you go.
And how old were you when this was going on?
By then I was 16, 17.
So you'd given up all academic hopes?
No, I was doing A-levels, but I failed miserably at them. I've got a.
So you had decided around about then, had you, that music was going to be your life, or not?
Well, no, I hadn't, because I was going to go to study English at Sheffield, and I wanted to be a reporter. And but I had a little band at school. When I say I was at school, most of the guys in it were adults, but I was at school, and the guitarist said, "You don't want to do that, do you?" I said, "Well, what else can I do?" And he said, "You can go to Leeds Music College, which had a jazz course." I'd never heard of such a thing. So he found an old prospectus. I wrote them a letter, heard from them 3 days later, and went and did an audition and got in. It was a good audition. I had to go around looking for someone to audition me. Great. It was a very relaxed college. I loved it there. I don't know if it would come up to standard now in the sense of ticking the boxes, but it was a great place to go if you wanted to be a musician. Bill Charlson, who auditioned me, I got him out at the bar and he played the piano and I played a couple of tunes. Then we had an oral test. I had to write down the French horn part from the Aeneid line, which was on every Sunday night then, so I knew that backwards, so I could do that. And then I got in, and that's when my mum and dad started worrying, really. And since then, I mean, I've been so lucky. I went to Leeds, and I've fell under the influence of this remarkable character called David Cooper, who never actually showed me anything, really, except how to sort of conduct yourself, what to listen to, and how to play. He'd play something at you, and you'd try and pick it up. But what a character. I mean, he had a personal motto of nothing in moderation, which unfortunately resulted in his death in his late 40s. But we had some cracking times together. It was more than a teacher-student relationship, really. After I'd left college, he used to come and stay with me in London, and he was very ill by then, but we still managed to...
What did you learn at Leeds that has proved to be most useful?
The most useful thing was playing in bands, because there was one guy at the college, a student, who was more interested in practicing than performing. You get people like that, they're just like playing in bedrooms and things. And so I did his ensembles as well towards the end. So it was playing in bands, learning how to be part of a band. There's so many different ensembles. I learned a whole load of stuff about arranging music as well, which has been important to me. Main arranging teacher was Tony Faulkner, who came back into my life later on. I hired him to write an octet album, an Ellington album for me, which he's an expert on. We had a nice time doing that. And I also, at the same time, started depping for members of staff. So there was gigs at things like Wakefield Theatre Club. There was all these places then, Batley Variety Club.
I've heard about that.
I got a job at Sheffield Embassy Ballroom. There was the Hassani Circus I used to do, Castleford Operatic. So I was working virtually every day in the last 2 years of college. It was tremendous.
You haven't mentioned one of the things that I knew very early on about your time at Leeds was that you shared rooms with Dave Newton.
Yeah. Clerical error, not Ella. That's Ella Fitzgerald. No.
How come? Let's move on from that. But to say, how come this relationship has lasted so long, Alan?
Well, I'm delighted it has. Dave possibly less so. We got on. The first day we played together the first day we met. We just played a duet, and it went very well. And Dave's like a complete orchestra when he plays the piano, so I've no reason to get rid of him. He can be quite critical of me. I mean, if I hit one note slightly sharp, or I make a bad choice, I hear the "oh, nice" under the breath, or the sharp intake of breath, or he starts sounding a note to check my tuning and things. And one night in a pub in Appleby, at the Appleby Festival, I'd had a few, and I said, you know what, we're probably going to end up playing together the rest of our lives. And he said, I'm beginning to think you're right. So, no, it's just great. I mean, he's done all my bands, and I love playing with him. And,
let's have an interlude of a video of you playing with Dave.
What a good idea, yeah.
That was pretty good, wasn't it? Right. Now, was it inevitable that you would move to London?
Well, I have to say that it wasn't at first, and the attitude at Sheffield Embassy Ballroom was, this is a jazz for life. The attitude at Jazz for Life, this at Sheffield Embassy Ballroom, that this is a good job, don't give it up. So when I handed me notice, I said, I'm moving to London. He said, all right, see you in 2 weeks. And I moved down with a trumpet player you may know called Paul Lacey, who runs the Back to Basie Orchestra now. I don't really see much of him these days. But we managed, he sorted it out. We got 2 rooms in a flat in East Dulwich. I remember it was a tenner a week. And we almost immediately landed a gig at the Punch and Judy.
I was going to say, what were your first jobs in London?
Punch and Judy, somebody heard it as a jam session. He was starting jazz at the Punch and Judy pub in Covent Garden. And we used to play 4 sessions a week, Thursday, Friday, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday, I think, unless I'm exaggerating. Yeah, it was 4, I think. And that was £8 a session, so that's your rent paid and everything. So it was...
Was there a moment, a gig in particular, that you can look back on and think, yeah, that was a turning point in my career?
No,
and those first few years or months in London?
Not really, no. I don't view things as improving, really. They just carry on very much the same because I'm quite content just playing the music. So there isn't a big time in what I do. There isn't a progression. You just either do it, and you do it to a certain degree. There was a bit more of an apprenticeship then, because there were bands about you could join. So whereas now everybody seems to have their own band, don't they, and play their own music. So I started out with Pasadena Roof Orchestra, for instance. That was a turning point. That got me touring Europe. Did that for a couple of years.
From what I read, it sounded like Tommy Chase was a bit of a turning point. Well, maybe
you're
not.
Answering your questions better than I am. That's absolutely right. That was a turning point. That was 1983. Tommy, sadly no longer with us. He died last year. Was an unforgettable experience when you met him. I'd never met anybody like him, and I think the best phrase to describe him would be a bit of a handful. He bought me 15 LPs the first day I met him. I said, I can't accept this. Don't tell me what you can and can't do. I can and can't do. Anyway, I joined his band, and a lot of interesting things happened, including we went to Paris for a while, and that started taking off. But we made a couple of LPs, and the type of music we were playing is summed up in the title of the albums. The first one was called Hard, and the second one was called Drive. So it was pretty full on.
Well, we have a video of you playing with Tommy Chase. Let's have a look at it now. Okay. So another big moment in your life was when you joined Humphrey Lyttelton a couple of years later. Tell us about working with Humph.
Well, it was great fun with Humph. I got offered the gig on a plane going to some festival in Holland. I was with Bob Wilbur's band, and he walked down the plane and said, "Bruce Turner's leaving. Do you want the job?" And I said yes, and that was it. So he always claims it's the shortest, job interview ever. So, but he was great, and lots of hilarious things happened. I mean, that's where I really started working with John Barnes, who was a hilarious guy. I mean, John would do all kinds of strange things on stage. There was a lovely moment when things always seem to happen when there was this duet of the double bass and Humph playing very quietly in a mute, as quietly as possible for great effect. And of course, during this, John would drop his gigantic metal reed cap holder, which would bounce across the stage. We were never sure if it was an accident. And you might want to cut this next bit. Well, when I first joined the band, I got salmonella poisoning. And I didn't realise that's what it was. I just thought I was very ill. But one of the side effects is dreadful wind, of course. I mean, you feel so ill. So again, during this number, I'm stood at the side there and I thought, well, I've got to let some of this go, And it actually felt like a space hopper escaping. And it settled in a cloud on Humph. I'm not kidding, his eyes started to water. And he came over and he says, I'd had the job a couple of weeks, and he said, I'm just checking how often this is going to happen. I said, well, let's hope it's a one-off, There you go. But no, I actually played on his last gig. It was very sad. At the end of the gig, he said, because I was depping with the band then. I left in 1992, I think. He said, I'm going in for surgery tomorrow, and I've got a 50-50 chance. I said, right. He says, if I don't make it, this will be the final day. And I said, okay, what happens if you do make it? He said, I'm going to live forever then. And unfortunately, he didn't make it, no. So,
yeah.
But it wouldn't have sat well with him not playing or not being on the road. He wasn't. He used to hate being patronised because he was old. I remember because he never lost any of his marbles. So I remember queuing up like in a co-op to get a sandwich with him on the road, and he got some change in his hand, and the woman went, "Hey, I'll do it for you. There we are, all done." And he went, "Don't bloody patronise me," So yeah, he was, tremendous force for good in the music. That's something I could have mentioned when I was getting into the music, was listening to his radio programme on a Monday night, which was hugely informative. I used to have a little piece of pad. Yeah, many of them. And there isn't really a substitute for that now.
I don't think there is.
It's gone. You're not going to hear a word like Barney Bigard or Teddy, but that was Teddy Bunn on the guitar, or Lyman Vunk on second tenor.
Don't remember that one.
Well, apparently Humph used to read the Brian Rust discography to his father when his father was quite old. Just those names like Lyman Vunk would reduce him to tears of laughter. Chauncey Morehouse. You don't meet people called Chauncey.
I don't think we've got enough time for more anecdotes about Humph. I read a lot of them, and I hoped you'd say some of them. Yeah. Perhaps we can come back to that a bit later.
Right, okay.
Anyway, but now a bit of an interlude, actually, in which you can tell us a bit about your life, if you had one, outside jazz. What did you do outside jazz?
Oh, you mean musically?
Musically.
All right. God, I thought you had something on me then. Can we get the beads of sweat removed? I've done lots of various things, commercial work, some session work. By the way, if there's I just want to make it clear, I'm not a session musician. I never was, and I don't want to insult the people who are by claiming I am. So, but I've done sessions where it's been relevant. It's been jazz type things, Dixieland clarinet on things. I've done quite a lot of library music that's jazz related. I've done all kinds of things really. So I used to be in the Parkinson band on the Parkinson show for 5
Did you?
years. Yeah, 5 years.
Don't remember seeing you there.
Oh, I was on the end. The only clip I've ever wanted is of Edna Everage on that show, because she came down the stairs and I was laughing so much I didn't play the cue. And I was sat on the end next to him. And Laurie Holloway was the MD. Edna put her arms out him and lifted him up. And he had to bring the band off on the final chord, being held in the air by Edna Everage. And of course, I couldn't play for laughing, you know. It was so funny. Actually, Barry Humphries was on a Christmas show on the Parkinson show, and he came on as Barry Humphries and read through the thing, didn't get a single laugh, and he turned around, and because I was on the end, so the people used to talk to me, and he said, "I think that's got comic potential. Do you?" I said, "Yeah, I think it's good, you know." And then the next time I saw him, he was in the bar in playing the part of Sir Les Patterson. He'd come in the bar and did a sort of show for the musicians, really, before. And of course, we're all falling about. And the same thing happened. He went on and did his Christmas poem, you know. "Let's have a jewel log. Come warm your hands on my Yule log." I remember one line. Yes, so I did that. I had 2 periods with the Brian Ferry band.
Yes.
First time I left, second time I was fired. That's how commercial music goes. We won't go into either of. I left the band to tour America.
Did you play on any adverts?
Oh, I'm coming to this.
Oh,
He's almost rushing me, isn't it? This could be a 2-parter. I'm already writing part 1 on the invoice in my head. Yes, I've played on a number of adverts.
Oh.
I played on a Lee Vanderbilt jeans. I played on a Durex advert, which I got a 28 pence royalty from. And I played on the Tetley Bitter ads.
Did you?
The distinctive baritone sound on there, yeah.
Shall we listen to that?
Let's hear it.
And see it as well.
Tetley's bitter. Smoothly does it.
A number of musicians crop up in your career, Alan, as well as Dave Newton, of course, we've mentioned. Bruce Adams.
Yep.
Of course.
Of course.
Any
yeah.
anecdotes you might share about him?
Oh.
The late Don Weller.
Lovely
Mark
Don,
Nightingale, Brian Lemon in the early days, Clark
Yeah.
Tracy, many more you play with. You're especially, I suppose the word is loyal to many of these musicians and others. Can you tell us about working regularly with these folks in bands?
Well, my feeling is you can only really play music as intimate as jazz with people you're totally at ease with. And I only play, all my bands only have my friends in. I wouldn't have anybody in a band of mine I wouldn't want to go for a pint with in the interval. So, and there's plenty of bands with people in you wouldn't want to go for a pint with in the interval. Actually, most of them don't drink anymore, so that cuts it out. So maybe loyalty's. It's nice that you say loyalty, but I'm very happy with those people. And in one interview, I was once asked, "What would you do if you had unlimited money? Who would you record with?" And I said, "Well, I'd just make another record with the same people, because, you know, you wouldn't expect Duke Ellington to say." By the way, I'm not putting myself in that league. I'm just using it as an example. He wouldn't say, "Duke, here's a load of money. Do what you want." He'd make an album with his band, wouldn't he? And at a lower level, I'll make another album with my band, you know, or bands.
Several bands you have.
Several bands, yeah. It's interesting how many Scottish people I sort of get on with, like Bruce.
Did that surprise you?
No, not at all. But I mean, there's something about the Scots that they're great jazz players.
Oh.
So many of them. Bobby Wellings, Tommy Whittle, Tommy McQuater, Duncan Campbell. You could go on, and Jimmy Hastings. There's just something about that 12/8 drum thing they've got up there. And I'm not joking now. You could hear the pipes, couldn't you? A little bit in Bobby Wellings' sound. It was there was a whine to it, you know.
You mentioned made a record with. You've made a load of records, at least 30. And 17 years ago, you started your own record label,
yeah.
Woodville Records.
I did, yeah.
Tell us about the business of making and selling records. Is
Right.
it financially worth it?
I wouldn't do it if it wasn't. I don't do what do they call it? Vanity projects. So each one does make a profit, apart from a handful. Some, you know, a handful haven't, but they've been the larger ensembles. I didn't expect to. So the smaller ensembles play for the larger ensembles, really. Slightly distracting.
But the way that music is sold these days,
Oh yeah, well,
is very, very different. You know, nobody buys CDs anymore. Well, I do, but not many people do.
it's been completely devalued. I mean, it's been totally undermined, and it's almost like a political move to devalue it all, because people don't want CDs. They're not even selling equipment to play CDs on. New computers haven't got a CD slot. New cars haven't got something to play a CD on. Everything's supposed to be downloaded. Everything can be streamed. You get hardly anything for it, and it's really, I think it's quite criminal the way it's gone. Personally, I mean, we all remember the excitement of going out and looking for second-hand jazz albums, LPs, with a beautiful piece of artwork on the back, and then the sleeve note that you would study in great detail, often full of erroneous information. Sounds like a jazz musician, erroneous information. And you look at, you know what I mean? It's these little things on it. And this lovely, I used to call it sleeve note talk. So it'd say, Oscar Peterson Trio, it'd say, Oscar helps himself to 2 more and digs deep in his blues bag. And I mean, whoever says things like that, you know.
I think we're long past you hearing you play one or other of your instruments, Alan.
Right.
So let's do that.
Okay.
You like to create suites, S-U-I-T-E-S, for your octet.
Yeah, I do.
Recent ones have been Jazz Christmas Carol, Portraits, both of which have been premiered at Fleet. This started with Sherlock Holmes in 2003.
Holmes, yeah.
No one else does this sort of thing, Alan, as far as I know, do they?
There's not many people doing it now. People did do it.
Right.
John Dankworth certainly wrote a Dickens suite. What
True.
with Dickens? Dear old Duncan Lamont, whose big band I used to play in at the Bull's Head every month, did a Cinderella one. He did a Sherlock Holmes one. And what's the other one he did that I... What if I just... yeah, I think he might have done a Dickens one. I can't remember. But...
What is it that grabs you about doing this sort of thing?
I just love I love especially Victorian literature.
Okay.
As I said earlier, I was going to go and do English, and I read Charles Dickens, and the Sherlock Holmes stories are just wonderful because they're sort of unintentionally comic as well about, you know, how people. I mean, if you just think of the front room with Holmes and Watson sat in the armchairs with the fire going, and Mrs. Hudson keeps coming in with a artery hardening meal, and there's a Persian slipper with the tobacco in, and the half smoked cigars are in the coal scuttle. A jackknife in the middle of the wooden mantelpiece with the unpaid bills. Melodious scientific experiment. Stradivarius laying on the thing. Commonplace books, all this. And a VR in pockmarks. He shot into the ceiling when he was a bit bored. You know, I mean, where are you going to get that? And of course, it's a gift to compose to. Because if you've got a title, like one of the titles of the tunes is The Tiger of San Pedro, who's a murderous dictator of South America. I mean, you can't go wrong, can you? You've got it. You've got the sinister bass line, the Latin American feel, the hoots of the jungle, you know. Fantastic. Box if you want. By the way, if any of your audience were moved to tears by my description of running a record label, you can help by going to woodvillerecords.com, and where you will find an array of riches.
What has been, for you, the most enjoyable band, partnership, recording of your career so far?
It's really difficult to put a structure on it, really. But I love working with my octet most because I write the music. Mark Nightingale is a great friend of mine and great musician. I always used to look at poems and things, like T.S. Eliot, and it's edited by Ezra Pound. Or I used to think, what the bloody hell does an editor do, you know? And my friend Ian Smith said, he used to teach English at Oxford, Ian, and he said, well, you know, editors are always good things to have. So Mark Nightingale's become my editor.
Yeah.
By the way, he's a lot more than that. That's something he's not going to mention on his CV. Mark's a brilliant trombonist, brilliant writer, but he looks through my stuff and he's got a lovely turn of phrase. He goes, "Is that what you intended? C?" I say, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, the tune being drowned out by this belching brass here." And I went, "Oh yeah, you don't think I'll hear it?" "No, you won't hear it." "Why don't you put the tune higher on this instrument?" "Thank you." So essentially it's the same bit, but something's happened. And you'll hear him go, "Oh God, not that rhythm again. Not that rhythm again."
And is he usually right?
I'd say I can't think of an instance where I've decided not to go with his advice.
Yeah, great.
So the answer to that is yes.
Yeah.
I didn't. Yeah, and he knows where to stop, so he doesn't take out the bit that makes it me. And it is more of a taking out than a putting in.
Okay, well, now let's listen to a track from one of Alan's CDs. They're all great, so I was going to say the best of Alan's CDs, but they're all great.
GRATE, great.
Tell us a bit more about what you've been up to during lockdown, Alan.
Well, it all started with tremendous energy for me. So I started practicing clarinet, and I thought I'm going to get the flute back together again, but that gradually petered off. I was doing hours of practice. I was so tired. And I realised I was sort of practising out of anxiety, really. You don't need to do that much practice, just enough to stay in, and thinking about it is harder than the actual playing thing. So I've started writing again, and I've been writing my version of David Copperfield. So I've done about 2/3 of it now, and I've got rather good... the one that's eluding me is Uriah Heep. I'm trying to do a slurpy alto thing on that.
Yes.
But it's quite hard to get that, oleaginous with this sort of rod of steel through it, because he's quite clearly plotting right from the first time you meet him. So it's I'm finding that a little bit hard, that one. But the other things have fallen into place. Mr. Creakle, the schoolmaster, thrashing about, is Bruce with a plunger mute, and the one I'm really proud of in it is Mr. Dick Flies His Kite, which is, Mr. Dick thought that, like in a lot of Dickens, it's the simpleton who always comes out with the truth. It's the highly educated people who you've got to keep an eye on because, they're a bit dodgy. And Mr. Dick is convinced that all the trouble when they cut Charles I's head off went into his head. So he writes all this trouble on the kite and sends it up. So we've got lovely soaring trumpets and trombones on that. So yeah, I'm pleased with that.
Good. You have a story about Humph and white shoes.
Oh God, yeah.
Can you recall that one?
Well, when I joined the Humphrey Littleton band, there was a couple of strange quirks of the band. One was the fact we had to do this thing called the march round, which Humph thought was a real New Orleansy thing to do. And Humph played clarinet in B flat, and he was very proud of his Creole-like tone. So the three clarinets, which was me, John Barnes and him, would have to march all the way around this auditorium. I mean, I'd do that kind of thing now without batting an eyelid. I'm unembarrassable. But when I was 30, I really used to think, I used to cringe, And the first time we did it was at the Cleethorpes Jazz Festival, and the first three people I went past were Pete King, Dick Morrissey, and Bobby Wellings, all look raising their eyebrows and looking at me, So that was a bit humiliating, really. And of course, John Barnes messing about. We were in one theatre, they had a huge organ at the back, and he pulled a stool out to trip me up as I came behind him, but I went round it, and Humph's got his clarinet in the air, turns around, nobbles both his knees on it, and nearly comes a crappie, So anyway, the white shoes was the other quirk of the band, was unusual band attire. He came up with this idea. He used to wear tartan trousers. Bruce saw these tartan trousers once and said, "Are you home on leave?" He thought he was back from the Black Watch, And we got introduced on a TV thing by Ronnie Scott. He said, and here he is, Humphrey Littleton and his trousers from hell. So Humph liked to kind of shock in a way with the bright trousers. But he had us in white shoes, bright blue trousers, bright blue shirts, white jackets, and a white tie, which is not my dress sense. And often white shoes are terrible, aren't they? They don't... So I thought, well, I'm not going down that line, so I'm going to get a really nice pair of white shoes. And I found these in a naval outfitters, a pair of officers' deck shoes in lovely kid leather. They're absolutely beautiful. I thought, these are great. And they were expensive, right? 180 quid then, so I'll have them. So anyway, I showed him Stan Gregg, and he went, Humph won't like those. He says, they're not white enough. They're sort of beige. I went, He says, don't worry, I've got some shoe paint. Right. So we get this thing. So we cover them in white paint. And then we flew to Abu Dhabi next day. And I got them out for the gig and found out I got a size 10 and a size 7. So I couldn't get the left one on. And the other was like a bloody ski, And of course, I can't take them back now. So I had to... Anyway, but there was a weird thing happened. This Arab guy came up. He heard from Humph about this, and he said, "I am the owner of the biggest shoe factory in Abu Dhabi. I will present you with new white shoes." And I said, "Oh." So anyway, he turned up with a pair of those white plimsolls that you know, when you're a kid at school running around. And I thought I'd seen the last of my shoes, but when we were leaving the compound where we'd been staying, there's a gardener I used to chat to. And as we drove off, I noticed he was wearing these shoes. You know, he'd seen them in the bin and go, "Oh, we'll have them," you know.
Well, I think, you know, that is a useful point at which to bring this fascinating interview to a close.
I didn't like the way he said fascinating, did you? So it almost had inverted commas.
Yeah, fascinating. It's all in inverted commas. So thank you very much, Alan, for
thanks
appearing.
for taking the interest. It's really nice.
And we'll leave it there.